Hello, I'm Kochanski, Wilderness Living Skills and Survival Instructor. We are touring my bookcases, my libraries, my book storage, and so on. It's a wonder that our house hasn't collapsed because of the quantities of books. Here in my so-called dining room, you might say, except for the fact that my wife demands a little bit of space. I would have more books, but she said she'd like to have some baskets shown. Here I have everything on Egyptology, and then probably from here and a few other shelves on Roman life, wild, edible, useful, medicinal, magical plants. As far as the plants are concerned, for every book you see here, there's 10 books stored elsewhere because we only have so much room in here. Homes, houses, home design, you might say crafting, general sort of topics and knowledge. We have the situation that in the corner I have about 100 books that are on plants. Food, cooking, health, and whatever relates to your digestive system, you might say. I've been extracting those books from my library. Over here we got a section that's on mathematics. Here we've got a bit of science, you might say. These things generally, when someone says, if you got a book on how to drive a car, I can take you to a section, there's be a bookcase, and there'll probably be 30, 40, 50 books. Generally, a lot of the books here are the ones, if they're in the house, they're the highest level of use, sort of thing. We will now go into my study where I have my computer. The situation here is that I'm just trying to get things organized for the Christmas holidays. And I've been sorting books, so you might see that there are piles here. But here we have, every book in here is one that I figure is pertinent. A lot of archaeology, anthropology, knots, fire, the books that have a lot of value with regard to future writing, and books that I would hate to lend. I put them in this room, and I don't usually let guests in here to say, oh, can I borrow this book, you might say. And of course I've got the computer where I do most of my word processing, you might say. And of course in what used to be the porch, right off the bat we have boxes and boxes of these loose leaf binders. A lifetime of collecting. So there is about there's over 100 boxes, you might say, and they're full. I've put everything into binders so that I've got the illustrations and the articles and resources to work with. I could actually pass this on to someone else who could probably make a living processing that information that I spent a lifetime in collecting. We have one of the problems in trying to fit all the books in a house, you usually have them by height of book. So there'll be 2 or 3 places where you'll find the same topic on account of the big books, or the ones that you find a hard place to put them. More books in here that are probably second to the books in the study where the computer is. A lot of first aid, a lot on physiology, some plants, the bigger plant books. I don't have to go to the local library because I have years of work extracting the information I want to extract from these. I wish I could hire a small army of people to process a lot of this stuff, but 70, well, I would say I started collecting in high school, so we're saying 60 years of collecting. The first book I bought was in grade 6. My wife's cookbooks. She has many more than that, but these are the ones she currently likes to have at the foot of the stairs. There is the books on gardening, which means that this is the domestic vegetable gardens. The pocket books. I like to set up so that every once in a while I grab one of these and read it to put myself asleep. The handbooks, the shells, the guides to North American fishes and dolphins and birds and astronomy, and all these handbooks are the ones that are used with regard to identifying whether it's mushrooms or birds. Here I have all the survival manuals that have, or manuals that have the word survival in the title, generally. So there's about 100 plus books that were published by the author with the idea of addressing the topic of survival. Now beyond this, there are thousands of books, but they're my wife's fiction library. She has tons and tons of books. Many books in here I bought in the last year. Many books I bought 60 years ago. Here in the living room we have this basic library. Most of the books here are on pioneering history, the historical writings, the writings of people who settled the country and had a story to tell. And then we have first aid and medical books, primarily emphasis on first aid, and then current science, books that are the popularization of various science topics. A great deal of these books are like that here. There's also in this corner a great deal of books on art, and the art, you might say, a book on a museum or a gallery or whatever. Up here are very popular books on the issue of the environment, the science, some of our favorite topics like Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond, Sex, Bombs, and Burgers, Noah's Flood, Darwin's Black Box. You want to look at the most expensive book I own, and it's The Complete Works of Da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci's book. I couldn't pass this up. It was on sale, but talk about a book. Who publishes stuff like this? A book that weighs probably 25 pounds. But everything practically he ever produced in one way or another. Hours and hours on a cold winter's night with a fireplace going. You go through this and look at it to your heart's content without having to go to a museum. All his inventions and all his illustrations, his notes, and everything that didn't get destroyed at one point or another manages to get into this book. So if you're a Leonardo da Vinci fan, this is the book to get. This is where Northern Bushcraft was written. Now it's called Bushcraft. It's where I did all my writing. I needed room. The kids were growing up, so I had this old garage, car garage, converted to a thing with a wood heater. The kids, for want of a better name, they made a sign for me called the Book Factory. And when the kids grew up and left home, well then their rooms became available for my use. And in here is the books on fishing, on the weather, on biology, and there are the books that rank high next to the house. For example, I might have 100 books on fishing. Over there is automotive repair. There are magazine collections in here as well, so I get old back issues of magazines. And, whatever I figure I haven't got room in the house, it ends up in here. So this is where predominantly a couple tons of books. And they come in here, and the collections are sorted For example, this bookcase is almost all on books on the United Kingdom. Something to do with Scotland, Ireland, or whatever. And then of course there's books that they need to find a home actually. But basically the amount here, then there's boxes and boxes above us. Then there is all the books over here that all the shelves are more or less used for books that have to do with health. Whether it's cancer or whatever. I have been extracting from the books here the ones on nutrition and that sort of thing, so they're left with the books on health and well-being and exercise and on. Above the books are actually a collection of everything that could be useful in home schooling with regard to the types of chemistry sets and physics sets and electronics labs, you might say. So I analyze them. This building is a storage facility for books. Instead of creating your 2x4 structure, I used 2x10 and cut slots in them, and when the building was built, I hammered in boards in the slots to make the bookshelves. So this is a bookshelf that looks like a building. And I get around to this part. Believe it or not, the books are separated into fairly distinct categories. I have a corner right here that is to do with the type of science taught in elementary schools. Here is every non-fiction pocketbook. Generally, I also laid out the pocketbooks with the idea that if a person was to go to the Antarctic and wanted a library, this probably would make sense and for compactness and so on. But they're all non-fiction. Devote itself to not natural, but crafting and weaving and that sort of topic. These are all camping, outdoors topics, more or less that wall. And the piles over here are a great deal to do with psychology. It means that when I have 100 psychology books, I probably would find that after I went through them, I'd keep one or two and the rest would be put somewhere else. I am quite interested in encyclopedias in the sense that I depend rather heavily, probably I would say that magazines maybe keep me current, but encyclopedias often, the older they are, the more valuable they are to me with regard to the type of basic primitive information. You'd be very surprised to learn how much they knew about radioactivity 200 years ago. Here we have predominantly a large section on plants. Just about all books in the title, they got something to do with plants, trees, shrubs, forestry, wherever anything to do there. I even have a section of 2 or 3 shelves on Russia. And then the how-to in here, all the things to do with repairing homes and the carpentry and whatever. Here I must have about a dozen different manuals. For example, here I have the Book of Knowledge that was provided to every school in Saskatchewan where I was brought up. So there's 20 volumes here, and in that small bookcase of books from grade 1 to grade 8, there was a set and 2 volumes missing, and as an adult I had to buy my own complete set to find out what I had missed on those 2 volumes that had disappeared, you might say. And I would say there is a terrific amount of neat knowledge presented in a way that every kid from kindergarten to grade 12 or even grade 8, you might say, should know everything in this type of a manual, because that makes a quality education, rounded education, religion, and all that sort of stuff. This bookcase right here is to do with literature a great deal. Then over to the side is a huge pile of everything to do with the armed services, with war topics, poetry. We get a lot of poetry here. Here we've got everything to do with horses, raising animals on the farm, swimming, atlases, a lot on history and anthropology. Then right near the camera we have a lot of the back issues of magazines, you know, like you might say Mother Earth News or Discover, a lot of the magazines that have information in them that really doesn't get old. And there's a lot of books on medical aspect, you know, on medicine, health, and so on. So you get an idea that over time a person collects an awful lot of books if you so choose. Here we have a tent I put up this middle of the summer to do some sorting, because again space comes into play. But there is another building that if you filled it right completely full of boxes of books, that probably there'd be some left over. So there's books that are stored in boxes elsewhere, so I would say a couple of tons more here or there. In the summer I spend a lot of time in here, but in the winter I come in and I get the books. Not books, there aren't many books in here. A few years ago I realized that every shed I had stored boxes of files. You say boxes of files, what am I talking about? We're talking about a book box that looks like an Apple box and whatever, and it's just full of files. So I started sorting them, and here so far, probably the job is maybe half done. And that information ends up being put in these protectors. So here I might have, the materials for a really good article in one protector. And so this is what all these binders are all about. So here, for example, sleeping bags. So this is nothing but information on sleep and sleeping bags and whatever. So it's under one manual. So you see here, general healing and medicine, health, the fins and the laps, navigation, early Rome, food, plants, insects, sun, eyes, smell, so on. So here we got, and I can now lay my hands on, if I'm looking for the information, I just lead the label on the back and I can locate an article pretty quickly. I suppose a person could scan all of this and put it all on a computer, but you have to get it into a scannable form. These are all the boxes that are to be put, they've been put in the sleeves, but they haven't been put in the manuals yet, so they have to be sorted. So I probably have 100 topics. You know, weather, aircraft, vehicles, cold, winter, clothing. There's probably 20 of these manuals on clothing, and various secondary survival, primary survival. There's just maps, water, canoeing, knots, on and on. So we got these topics that very shortly I'll have sorted everything, and then I'll probably just finish sorting, and then I'll kick the bucket or something. Maybe I might convince my son and my daughter to carry on with the situation here. These are all magazine articles, or when I got a hold of a book that I couldn't own, I would photocopy it. My photocopy bill on an annual basis is probably like, there are years that I spent $1,000 on photocopying alone. It was nothing to walk into a library in Calgary or some other city and walk out with $200 or $300 worth of photocopying, and that's what it ends up here. There's thousands of dollars tied up in buying magazines and then cutting them apart, or photocopying articles that I like to possess, and then putting them into a usable form. So I could probably dispense with every book I own and work just from these loose leaf binders for the rest of my life and not run out of things to do.